All right, it's been a bit of a day, we'll say, in the world of politics. Candidates jumping in and out of races, some switching to completely different ones. It's been quite a lot to keep up with. And these candidates only have a few hours left to do all of this, to be in place on the March primary ballot.
Some of those decisions are also coming down to the last minute because the Supreme Court just upheld the Texas congressional map redrawn this summer by Republicans. That means those remain in effect next year for the primary election, despite the court allowing legal challenges to still move forward. Today, we want to discuss all of this, as well as some other political developments with two former state lawmakers. Dennis Bonnen previously served as the Texas House Speaker and represented Southeast Texas, while Mark Strama was a Democratic state representative here in the Austin area. Dennis and Mark, welcome back.
Thank you.
We appreciate y'all being here. We got interrupted last week during our conversation due to some breaking news, but now we actually have a bit more clarity on some of the topics we had hoped to ask you about last week. We'll remind our audience, we've now heard from the Supreme Court about those redistricting efforts. We have more clarity at what those maps will look like. So, Dennis, I want to start with you. Do you think Texas Republicans can pick up those 5 seats that they are wanting to in Congress?
Sorry,
and I see
Dennis
Mark wanting
wants me to go first
Okay.
on this one because we were starting to talk about this on Friday, and I have to admit, Dennis was I can't say it. He was not wrong about whether the Supreme Court had effectively acted with that initial decision to take the case. The Supreme Court did uphold the new maps, which means Congressman Doggett has retired, or is retiring officially from the United States Congress after a long period of serving this community in various elected offices, state Senate, the Supreme Court of Texas, and Congress for a very long time.
And we had a chance to actually talk to him on Friday, just hours after he made that announcement, so you can watch that on our website, KXAN.com.
Okay, you were not wrong.
So, pretty confident in 4. Maybe not 5, but it depends on who you ask. But there are 4 that I think there's a high level of confidence in, and there's a 5th one that's a little harder to be as confident in.
Why is that exactly?
Say more.
Because when you draw the maps, you're given the numbers, and it kind of suggests that it's trending, not trending, but here are the hard numbers. What's not in there is trends. And so some people believe that there are some trends that are going against what the historic numbers indicate for the Republicans, and one, or really there are 2, but I think there's only one that the Republicans, I'm not saying they won't win it, but there's only one that I think is in question.
I would just point out, I remember in 1994, when Bill Clinton was unpopular in his first term as president, and Newt Gingrich was swept into the speakership on a wave of Republican backlash against Bill Clinton's presidency. I remember 2010, and in a lot of those districts, nobody saw it coming. Same in 2010, when Republicans had a sweep backlash against Obama. I interviewed somebody from the Texan who said, if the margins are like they were in 2018, a year of Democratic backlash against Trump's first term in the presidency, they would only win 2 of the 5 districts that they gerrymandered, just if that was the exact numbers. Then you see what happened last month in Virginia and New Jersey, where there was a 13-point shift toward Democrats from the way those states had voted in 2024. Texas is not New Jersey, not Virginia. But if it's that kind of election year, it's not only that they might not win those 5 seats they gerrymandered, they might have put some of the previously incumbent Republican seats at risk, because to make 5 new Republican seats, they had to make the current Republican seats narrower Republican margins. So, I'm not predicting, who knows, it's a long way away, but you have always argued against my critique of that mid-decade gerrymander.
Well, yes.
That I should support it because it makes the general elections more interesting. I do support having more competitive general elections, and I think we might.
Oh, now he says it's good.
Well, we do know Colin Allred is going to be running for Congress instead in a redrawn district, potentially setting up a primary fight with the incumbent, Julie Johnson. I don't want to talk about that at the moment, just wanted to point out that detail. So later today, we want to get your thoughts about this. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is holding an event in her hometown of Dallas. We fully anticipate her to jump into the U.S.
district. Her hometown's up in Missouri.
Fair point. Okay. It is expected that Crockett will announce a run for the U.S. Senate seat, or at least the Democratic primary in that. So, Dennis, I want to start with you. What do you think of her candidacy? What does that potentially do for Republicans?
I honestly think it helps Republicans.
Why is that?
Because she's a lightning bolt. And I think that, she has turned herself into AOC Jr., and AOC is not winning in Texas. I don't see Jasmine Crockett winning in Texas. And so if she can make her way out of the Democratic primary, which my guess is the Democrats aren't smart enough to realize that she's not the answer, and I think it actually guarantees that whoever the nominee for the Republicans is would win. I think Jasmine Crockett would be the most beatable Democrat that they could serve up for a U.S. Senate race.
And Mark, what do you think about that?
Full disclosure, James Tallarico was a volunteer in my campaigns when he was 15 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Known
So
him
he's
for a
also
long
running for
time.
Senate, just to point that out for everybody.
And it's just the two of them now, right?
And now it's just the two of them. I'll tell you an interesting thing. First of all, I tend to believe James is the more electable Democrat in a state that hasn't voted for a Democrat statewide in 30 years. I do think Democrats are going to be thinking about electability. This is a Democratic Party that nominated Joe Biden for president in 2020 when he was not the most exciting candidate in the race because they just wanted to win.
I think if electability is what they pick, Jasmine Crockett's in trouble.
Well, I'm saying I
Yeah.
do think
No, I
the
get you.
Democratic
That's what I'm
primary vote
saying.
is
Yeah.
going to be looking at who do we think can win in the general.
Right.
And I will say in the Texas Politics Project polling, both of them are mostly unknown to statewide voters, and she outpolls him on the intensely favorable by 6 points. But she also has 20 percentage points more in the highly unfavorable column.
Wow.
So
How'd she do that?
and then the last thing I'll say is this. Congressman Allred dropping out means there won't be a runoff. I actually think a runoff would have helped. In today's politics, attention is 80% of the game, and having a competitive race with Jasmine Crockett helps James Tallarico if he wins the
if he were to
nomination.
win.
If he wins the nomination. It helps him in the general. If it had gone to a runoff and they'd have had 2 more months of visibility, I think that would have helped too.
Actually, I disagree. It would have killed both of them. If they both had to go in a runoff and be the most liberal, the most socialist, the most crazy, the most AOC Democrat, they would have destroyed any possibility of winning in November.
And I will hold you to that when we watch the Republican primary go to a runoff, as it looks like it might.
But we're a Republican state.
Yeah, they still
you
got
gotta
to
for a
run to
Democrat-
the base.
I hear
They
you.
got to
but
run to the
I
extreme.
get your point. My point, though, is to win in November, a Democrat candidate has to win marginalized Republicans, independents. And so being a socialist Democrat doesn't help you win marginalized Republicans, independents.
Yeah, but I think the same logic applies. I actually started by saying the amount of attention that a runoff commands is an advantage to whoever wins it. So I do give that to if they go to a runoff in the Republican primary. If the outcome of that is to have nominated somebody who is the most appealing to the extreme base in the party, it
can
offsets
backfire.
the advantage.
Yeah, but it backfires less to the majority party.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, we could keep, I know Will and I were both saying we have follow-up questions, but we want to be mindful of our time and we don't want to miss this conversation. We know the Texas governor's race, talking about attention and eyeballs, will get a lot of that. We know Governor Greg Abbott is running for a record 4th term. As a part of that, he's made a lot of headlines by promising to work towards eliminating school property taxes. Of course, that's the largest source of funding for Texas public schools. So give us your reaction, and then really what we want to talk to you all about is that something you think he can deliver on? As folks who have served in the State House, how realistic is that promise?
Well, let me be clear, because you talked about this state funding for schools, or not state, but the school funding, local funding. It's a local tax. People forget that. This is a local tax, not a state tax. But the governor's been very clear. He wants to eliminate M&O and replace it with state dollars. So he is not saying we're going to just leave our public schools high and dry. He is saying, I want to take care of our local taxpayers and take care of our schools at the same time. So with that said, his proposal is to do that. Also wrapped in that is some exceptionally strong changes to protect local taxpayers in dealing with property taxes. Wanting a 2/3 vote to be able to raise property taxes locally. I mean, there's some powerful things he has in there. So the question is, what we've talked about is that if someone doesn't step up like Governor Abbott's doing now and put the elimination of the property tax on a path, we'll never get it there. So can he deliver on that in the next legislative session of eliminating them? I don't think you can eliminate them in the next session, but what you can do in the next session is begin the process of putting them on the pathway to elimination, which I think is truly Governor Abbott's goal.
The last time this was discussed, I think it's been a year and a half or so, where there was some attention paid to this issue, and I think I remember that it was something like a 20-cent sales tax necessary to fully offset local property taxes. I don't think that that's a good solution. If there's another way to buy down local property taxes are a big pain point for taxpayers. It's a tax on an illiquid asset. If your income goes down, your property taxes still keep going up in most cases. And in Travis County, or certainly in AISD, people experience the pain of paying a lot of local property taxes to the school district that get reallocated around the state. If the state's share of school spending goes up, that's good for local property taxpayers. It's also good to diminish the effect of recapture of the Robin Hood school system. That said, I don't see a path without a big replacement tax. I don't see a path to buying down local property taxes to zero.
With that said, there's something that gets forgotten that sort of speaks to your point. $51 billion is baked into this state budget to reduce local property taxes. And Governor Abbott's point is,
right?
Correct. And Governor Abbott's point above all is we're spending $51 billion that come from Texas taxpayers to buy down local property taxes, and they're not feeling it as much as they should. And so we need to do something about that. And in his proposal is not simply eliminating that M&O. He has taxpayer protections, which already exist, but he's taking even greater positions to go further on those taxpayer protections so that they start to feel that $51 billion that we're going to be spending now to the end of time to have brought down local property taxes.
I think the one thing I'd say to this is it would be healthy to have a discussion that separates two issues. You did a good job at the beginning by saying this isn't about how much we spend on education, this is about how we pay for it. And we should have a healthy discussion about how much we should be spending on education. And we should have a separate discussion about how to pay for it, but there are two distinct questions.
Okay, well that discussion will continue, not on this particular show, but for many to come. So we want to appreciate you all again, Dennis Bonnen and Mark Strama, for coming and talking about this. Plenty more to discuss in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back after this. Stay with us.